She didn't even look up at me. I was worried she would leave me, just like how my family did. Well, she didn't let go. She held on to me like we were in a storm at sea, and I was her only way to survive. We stood there in each other's embrace, scared to lose each other. We did calm down enough to sit down at the base of the sad apple tree. I continued to hold her close, promising her that I would fight this battle. I promised I wouldn't lose. I wouldn't fail. We stayed together that night. We ended up falling asleep together. When I woke up, I found Thistle gone, but a blanket was over me. It was a chilly morning, so I went back home with the blanket. I assumed the blanket was from Thistle, but when I entered the house, I saw the maid who checked on me in my room that one day.
I started the warm bath for you. Go get washed up. Breakfast will be ready soon.
She was the one who put the blanket over me. I didn't want to get sicker, so I followed her instructions and got into the bath. It was relieving. When I finished, I went back down to thank the maid, and I found everyone at the table. It was quiet, almost overwhelming. I sat down and my father spoke, avoiding eye contact.
You are going to fight the cancer. I don't care what your feelings are about it. You're going to fight it and die with dignity. You're too weak to be in the wars, obviously not smart enough to be successful. So do one thing right and win the battle.
My sister tried to defend me, but he shut her up. That was the last straw for me.
I'm going to beat this cancer, but I'm not doing it for you. I'm going to win because I want to.
I slammed my hands down on the table as I stood.
I'm going to win so I can prove to you that I'm not the screw-up. I'm going to prove to you that you are the problem in this family, not me.
My father stood up and slapped me hard across the face, making me have a cut on my cheek from his wedding ring. My sister got up to help me, but my mother held her back as she yelled,
Stop! Leave him alone!
My father kept his eyes on me.
You will be nothing, and I hope the cancer kills you.
He stormed out as the maid came over to help fix my cheek. Did no one try to stick up for you? Did no one try to fight for you? My sister attempted that one time, but my mother didn't want her hurt. After all, she was the perfect child. After the argument with your father, did anything happen afterwards? Or was the rest of the morning just as bad? He avoided me. He didn't want anything to do with me. He dared not to step in the same room as me. I kind of liked it that way. The more he was away, the more free I felt. Even though I was free, I still had to find a way to pay for my own treatment. I didn't want to do anything too risky without trying everything else first. So with the help of Thistle, I began painting more and selling them. It took a while, but I was slowly making money. I even worked on commissions for signs in the city, making logos, writing stories, and giving others inspiration. I was doing everything in my power to stay busy. This continued for the next year, and my pains were getting worse. It was getting hard for me to move, and my seizures were getting worse. The year passed, and I couldn't move much. I couldn't even go up the stairs without feeling pain. One day, everyone was out of the house, so I called Thistle over. With the seizures, I couldn't be alone for long periods of time. We were together the entire day, making paintings, and she was making jewelry. She ended up stopping me from painting and put 2 small blue flower emblems on my collar. She made them just for me.
As a thank you for your painting.
I turned to look at her, seeing her beautiful face. I ended up taking a piece of her jewelry wire and a single pearl bead. I put the bead in the middle of the wire and twisted it slightly. I put it on her ring finger and twisted the wire shut to make it into a ring for her.
This is my promise. That you're my one and only.
She smiled, and we embraced each other with an amazing kiss. Around dinner time, we went downstairs, and I was trying to make some soup for Thistle and I. Thistle was cutting up the vegetables when I was making the broth. Suddenly, my hand starts twitching. I dropped the ladle and tried to grab the stove as I fell to the floor. I couldn't breathe as my body twitched on the floor. I could hear the faint sounds of Thistle calling for me. Couldn't move. Couldn't speak. My vision was blurry, but I could see a flash of orange coming from the stove. I started hearing Thistle scream in pain, but I couldn't help. I ended up passing out. That must have been horrible to experience. What happened afterwards? This part of the story was taken from me. That seizure was what put me in the coma I mentioned in the beginning. I was in that coma for 2 months. Do you have any recollection of anything from the coma? Any dreams? Memories? Anything like that? One moment, actually. I heard a voice. It was a man. It sounded familiar, but I couldn't recall who it was. He said to me,
I can save you, but you have to say yes. I know you can hear me. Just tap your finger for me if you want me to save you.
The voice was echoing in my head, and I didn't know if my body answered for me or not. Until I found myself back at the apple tree. The tree looked happier. It looked healthy. Just like the first day I found it. The leaves glow in the golden sunlight, making them look like emeralds. The apples were healthy and full of that ruby red color. The trunk was strong and had the golden brown in the light. As I walked around it, I saw Thistle holding the painting I first painted of the tree. But this time, the painting had her in it, in the exact position I put her in that first night we met. When Thistle looked at me, she smiled.
It's beautiful. Just how you described it in my head.
I felt something wet go down my face, and I reached up to realize I was crying. Thistle got up carefully, placing the painting on the root she sat on before, and walked over to give me a warm embrace. As I held her tightly close, I felt at home. I never wanted to leave that moment. Thistle smiled as she held onto me, as she spoke in her soft and caring voice.
I'd love for you to stay here with me, but I'm afraid that this isn't the time.
I was confused at what she meant by that, and I pulled away slightly to look at her. I asked,
Not the time. What do you mean? You were supposed to stay together forever.
She gave me a warm smile, but I could see her tears forming.
I'm going to miss you, Raine. Don't forget me.
In that moment, I felt a sharp pain in my neck. It covered the place on my neck where I felt the pain, and I looked at Thistle.
What is happening? Please. Please don't leave me.
Thistle gave me a passionate kiss, and I pulled her closer to me to hold her to it. When she pulled away, she smiled softly with sadness in her eyes.
I love you, Raine Monurvous.
I looked at her with sorrow, and everything went black before I woke up in a hospital room, gasping for air.
Do you want to take a break from this and come back to it later?
I'm sorry. Please. Excuse me.